Admiral Park Hyunwoo had been drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming across Seoul Station. He rushed to the command center, still buttoning his uniform jacket. What he saw on the main screen made him forget all about being tired. 1,000 alien ships hung in space at the edge of their solar system. They weren't like anything humans had ever built. These vessels looked like giant metal sharks, all smooth curves and deadly edges. Each one was easily 10 times bigger than Earth's largest space station. They floated there in perfect formation, silent and threatening. "How long have they been there?" Hyunwoo asked, settling into his command chair. Lieutenant Kim So-ra looked up from her workstation, her face pale. "They just appeared, sir. No warning, no energy signatures. One moment space was empty, the next moment they were just there." Around the command center, dozens of officers and technicians worked frantically at their stations. Red warning lights bathed everything in an eerie glow. The air recycling system seemed louder than usual, or maybe it was just that everyone was holding their breath. Commander Lee Jin-ho, Hyunwoo's second in command, pulled up tactical displays on the holographic projectors. "Sir, our long-range sensors are having trouble getting accurate readings. Whatever technology they're using for those hulls, it's absorbing most of our scanning attempts." "Keep trying," Hyunwoo said. He'd been in the Space Navy for 23 years, had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, and helped establish the first colonies on Mars. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. The communications console chimed with an incoming signal. Kim So-ra's hands trembled slightly as she worked her controls. "Sir, they're transmitting on all frequencies. Audio and visual. Put it through to the main display." The screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that belonged in nightmares. The alien commander was tall and thin, with a body that seemed to be part insect and part machine. Its head was elongated, with 6 black eyes arranged in 2 rows. When it spoke, clicking mandibles moved like scissors, and its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet," the creature said, and somehow the translation software made its words understandable. I am Fleet Commander Thexol of the Cytherian Empire. Your world has been selected for reclamation. This is not a negotiation. You have 72 of your standard time cycles to choose. Evacuate your planet completely or submit to processing. Those are your only options. The alien tilted its head, studying something off-screen. Your species appears to have achieved basic spaceflight and simple orbital construction. This is adequate for evacuation purposes. We will allow your people to take basic supplies and relocate to any uninhabited system of your choosing. This is more generous than we typically offer primitive worlds. Several officers in the command center shifted uncomfortably. Hyunwoo noticed that Jin-ho's hand had moved unconsciously toward his sidearm, even though it would be useless against ships thousands of kilometers away. "However," Thexel continued, "if you choose processing, your species will be incorporated into the Cytherian Empire as a labor class. Your planet's resources will be extracted efficiently, and your population will be relocated to appropriate work facilities. Many species find this option preferable to the uncertainty of exile." The alien commander paused, its multiple eyes seeming to look directly through the screen at each person in the command center. "You have 72 cycles. Use them wisely. This transmission will not be repeated." The screen went dark. For a long moment, nobody in the command center spoke. The only sounds were the humming of computers and the distant vibration of the station's rotation, creating artificial gravity. Jin-ho was the first to break the silence. "Sir, should we contact Earth Command, the President, the UN Security Council?" Hyunwoo leaned back in his chair, thinking. Outside the station's windows, Earth hung blue and beautiful against the black of space. 72 hours. 3 days to decide the fate of humanity. But as he looked at his crew, at these men and women who dedicated their lives to protecting Earth, he realized something. The alien had made one crucial mistake. It had assumed that humanity would simply accept those 2 choices. "Open a channel back to their fleet," he said quietly. Kim So-ra looked confused. "Sir, they said the transmission wouldn't be repeated." "I'm not asking them to repeat anything. I'm sending them a message." The communications officer's hands moved across her controls. "Channel open, sir." Hyunwoo stood up slowly, straightening his uniform. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady, the voice of someone who'd made a decision and wouldn't be changing his mind. Fleet Commander Thexal of the Kytherian Empire, you have made your offer. Now I'll make mine. You have one chance to turn your ships around and leave our solar system peacefully. This is the only warning you'll receive. He nodded to Kim So-ra, who cut the transmission. The command center was completely silent again. Then, from somewhere in the alien fleet's direction, came a sound that the translation software somehow managed to convey. It was unmistakably laughter. 2 days had passed since the aliens gave their ultimatum, and the Kytherian fleet was getting impatient. Their massive ships had moved closer to Earth, cruising past Mars like they owned the place. Fleet Commander Thexal stood on his bridge, multiple eyes scanning holographic displays showing Earth's pathetic defenses. Still no response from the humans? He asked his communications officer, mandibles clicking with amusement. Nothing, Commander. Complete radio silence from their planet. Thexal's insect-like head tilted thoughtfully. In his experience, primitive species usually responded to ultimatums in one of 2 ways. Either they begged and pleaded for mercy, or they sent angry threats they couldn't back up. This silence was unusual but not particularly concerning. Most likely the humans were arguing among themselves about which option to choose. Bring up the planetary processing protocols, he ordered. I want to review the extraction procedures. One more time. Their world appears to have excellent mineral deposits, and the population size is perfect for our labor requirements. His tactical officer, a younger Kytherian with bright green carapace markings, pulled up the requested files. Sir, should we begin preliminary scans of their major population centers? It would help us plan the processing facilities. Excellent thinking, Thexal replied. Begin deep scans of their largest cities. Focus on infrastructure that we can repurpose. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as the crew went about their work. This was routine for them. They'd processed dozens of worlds over the past century. The pattern was always the same. Arrive, issue ultimatum, wait for surrender or evacuation, then harvest everything useful from the planet. Thexal was examining population density maps of Earth's major continents when every alarm on his ship started screaming at once. Contact! Contact! His tactical officer shouted over the noise. Incoming projectile, high velocity. Shields to maximum. Evasive maneuvers, Thexal barked. But even as he gave the orders, he knew it was too late. Whatever was coming at them was moving far too fast to avoid. Meanwhile, on Lunar Base, Colonel Han Min-seo watched her targeting computer finish its calculations. She'd been waiting for this moment since the alien fleet first appeared. Her railgun installation was humanity's most advanced kinetic weapon, built into the moon's surface and powered by fusion reactors buried deep in the lunar rock. Margantixi. Acquired, she announced to her crew. Flagship's forward sensor array, distance 2 million kilometers. Firing solution locked. Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Park Jae-won, looked up from his console. Colonel, the projectile will reach them in 18 seconds at current velocity. Should I load an explosive warhead? Min-seo shook her head. Negative. Load a solid tungsten penetrator. No explosives. This is a message, not an attack. The weapon, charged with a deep humming sound that vibrated through the lunar base's corridors. Technicians at monitoring stations watched power levels climb to maximum. The railgun itself was a marvel of engineering, a magnetic acceleration tunnel 3 kilometers long that could launch projectiles at incredible speeds. Weapon ready, Colonel, Jae-won reported. Min-seo looked at the tactical display one more time. The alien flagship sat there in space, arrogant and confident, probably not even aware that humanity had weapons capable of reaching it. Fire when ready. The tungsten slug left the railgun at nearly 10% the speed of light. It was a simple piece of metal, no bigger than a person's fist, but moving at that velocity it carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. Back on the Kytherian flagship, Thexal watched in shock as the projectile passed through his ship's energy shields like they were made of paper. The shields were supposed to stop anything, from laser beams to plasma bolts to nuclear missiles. They were the most advanced defensive technology in the Kytherian Empire. The slug punched through the ship's hull with surgical precision. It entered through the forward sensor array, traveled through 17 decks of corridors and equipment, rooms, and exited through the rear hull. The hole it left was perfectly round, barely wider than the projectile itself. "Damage report," Thexal demanded, his voice higher than usual. "Minimal structural damage, sir," his engineering officer replied, sounding confused. The projectile somehow avoided hitting any critical systems. It's like it was aimed to miss everything important. Thexal stared at the hole in his ship's armor. The shot had been impossibly precise. It had threaded between power conduits, life support systems, and weapon arrays without touching any of them. A computer couldn't have calculated a path that perfect, and yet somehow the humans had done exactly that. His communications officer looked up suddenly. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth. Put it through." Admiral Park Yun-woo's face appeared on the main screen, looking calm and completely unimpressed by the massive alien fleet surrounding his planet. Fleet Commander Thexal, the human, said in that same steady voice from 2 days ago, "I trust you received our message. You now have 24 hours remaining to accept our offer of safe passage from this system." The transmission ended, leaving Thexal staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to understand what had just happened. How had a primitive species managed to fire a weapon through shields that should have been impenetrable? How had they achieved such impossible accuracy across millions of kilometers of space? And most disturbing of all, if this was just a warning shot, what were the humans actually capable of when they stopped holding back? Fleet Commander Thexal paced around his bridge, his 6 eyes scanning multiple data screens at once. The hole in his ship's hull had been patched, but the memory of that impossible shot still bothered him. His senior staff had spent hours analyzing what happened, and their conclusions were helping him sleep better. "Show me the full analysis again," he ordered his chief intelligence officer. The younger Catherian pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's entire solar system. "Commander, we've completed deep scans of every human installation. Their technology is exactly what we expected from a primitive species." Red dots marked human settlements throughout the system. Earth itself glowed with the heat signatures of billions of inhabitants. The Moon showed several small bases and that troublesome railgun installation. Mars had a handful of research outposts and small colonies. "Their space fleet consists of exactly 12 ships," the analyst continued. "None larger than our smallest scout vessels. Their weapons technology is based on kinetic projectiles and primitive chemical explosives. Even their fusion reactors are barely more advanced than what we used centuries ago." Thexal nodded, feeling his confidence return. "What about that shot they fired? How do you explain the accuracy?" "Simple luck, sir. They probably fired dozens of rounds and only one hit. Their computers are far too primitive to calculate the kind of targeting solution they would have needed. It was a desperate gamble that happened to work." Another officer spoke up. "Commander, we've also analyzed their communication patterns. They've been sending encrypted messages throughout their system for the past day. Most likely, they're coordinating their evacuation plans." "Excellent," Thexal said, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Continue monitoring their communications. I want to know the moment they begin loading their evacuation ships." Far across the solar system, in a command center buried deep inside the asteroid Ceres, General Yoon Hye-jin was having a very different kind of meeting. She sat at a curved control desk, surrounded by dozens of holographic displays, each one showing a different part of the asteroid belt. "Ma'am, we're receiving the final activation codes from Earth Command," reported her communications officer. Major Kim Sung-ho Hye-jin had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. She'd overseen the construction of humanity's most secret defensive project, hidden in plain sight among the asteroid belt's mining operations. To any observer, Ceres Command looked like just another mineral extraction facility. The reality was far different. "Authenticate the codes and begin Phase 2 positioning," she said quietly. Around the asteroid belt, dozens of installations that had been mining rocks for decades suddenly revealed their true purpose. What looked like simple ore processing equipment was actually sophisticated magnetic acceleration systems. The mining tunnels carved deep into asteroids weren't for extracting minerals, they were for housing massive engines. Asteroid 433 Eros began moving first, Its hidden fusion drives ignited, pushing the space rock out of its natural orbit. Then Vesta followed, its own concealed engines firing in perfect synchronization. One by one, asteroids throughout the belt started changing course. Major Kim watched the tactical displays with amazement. "General, all stations are reporting successful engine startup. We have 47 mobile platforms online and moving to assigned positions." Hyejin nodded calmly, but inside she felt a surge of pride. This had been humanity's greatest engineering project, taking longer to complete than the pyramids of Earth. For 30 years, thousands of engineers and workers had hollowed out asteroids, installed massive engines and disguised everything to look like normal mining operations. "Send word to the Jupiter stations," she ordered. "Tell them it's time to wake up the big guns." Her communications officer's eyes widened. "Ma'am, you mean the Ganymede project?" "All of them. Ganymede, Europa, Io, Callisto. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." Light minutes away, the signals reached Jupiter's moons. In hidden facilities buried beneath kilometers of ice and rock, technicians began powering up weapons systems that made the moon's railgun look like a toy. These installations had been built in absolute secrecy, disguised as research stations, studying Jupiter's radiation belts. Back on the Cytherian flagship, Thexal was reviewing his fleet's approach vectors when his science officer noticed something unusual. "Commander, we're detecting some minor gravitational anomalies in the asteroid belt. Several large rocks appear to be moving slightly out of their predicted orbits." Thexal barely looked up from his tactical planning. Probably just the natural chaos of that debris field. Asteroids bump into each other all the time. "Yes, sir, but the movement patterns seem almost—" "Focus on important matters," Thexal interrupted. "We have a planet to process, not asteroids to catalogue." If he had paid attention to those minor anomalies, Fleet Commander Thexal might have realized that humanity's real defenses weren't the obvious installations around Earth and Luna. The real weapons were hiding in plain sight, disguised as harmless space rocks, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. But like so many conquerors throughout history, he saw only what he expected to see, a primitive species with primitive defenses. It was a mistake he would understand soon. Enough. The final day of the alien ultimatum began with something no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. On monitoring stations scattered across dozens of star systems, alien scientists and automated sensors started picking up massive energy readings from Earth's solar system. The strange part wasn't that energy was being detected. It was where it was coming from. It wasn't Earth. It wasn't even Earth's moon. The energy signatures were coming from everywhere at once, scattered throughout the entire solar system, like someone had lit up 1,000 hidden campfires. On the Andorian listening post, 3 star systems away, a purple-skinned technician stared at his readings in confusion. "Director, you need to see this. The energy output from the Sol system just increased by 4,000% in the last hour." His supervisor floated over, her tentacles manipulating multiple control interfaces at once. "That's impossible. Show me the source locations." When the holographic display updated, both aliens fell silent. The energy wasn't coming from any single source. It was scattered across billions of cubic kilometers of space, as if the humans had somehow turned their entire solar system into one giant machine. Deep inside asteroid 2087, Karin, Captain Song, Taehyun was finally seeing 30 years of secret work come to life. His command center looked nothing like what the aliens would expect from a primitive species. Holographic displays showed real-time positions of hundreds of installations throughout the asteroid belt, each one disguised as simple mining equipment. "Status report," he called out to his crew. "All primary engines online, Captain," reported his engineering officer, Lieutenant Choi Min-jung. "We're maintaining acceleration at 0.003 g. Estimated time to assigned position, 14 hours." Song looked at the tactical display showing his asteroid's new trajectory. For 28 years, asteroid 2087 Karin had followed a predictable orbit around the Sun. Just another piece of space rock among millions. Mining ships had come and gone, extracting valuable metals and leaving behind what looked like empty tunnels, except the tunnels weren't empty. They contained fusion engines powerful enough to move a mountain. "Captain, we're receiving position updates from Ceres Command," his communications officer announced. "General Yoon sends her compliments and wants to know if we need any assistance with our trajectory adjustment." Song smiled. "Tell the General that Karin's station is performing perfectly. We'll be in position right on schedule." Throughout the asteroid belt, similar conversations were happening on dozens of hidden installations. Asteroid 433 Eros was adjusting its course to intercept the alien fleet's escape route. Vesta, the second-largest asteroid in the belt, was slowly moving to block another potential exit. Even tiny chunks of rock no bigger than cars were changing direction, each one equipped with small but precise maneuvering thrusters. The aliens finally began to notice when their long-range sensors started registering impossible readings. On the Cutherian flagship, Navigator Zektar was running his third diagnostic on the sensor array. The readings had to be wrong. "Commander Thexel, sir, I'm detecting anomalous movement throughout the asteroid belt." Thexel looked up from his battle plans, irritated. "Define anomalous." "Sir, it appears that several large asteroids are changing orbit, not randomly but in coordinated patterns." Zektar's voice was getting higher with stress. "Ceres has shifted its trajectory by 12 degrees. Vesta is accelerating toward our position, and there are dozens of smaller objects that seem to be moving with purpose." "That's impossible," Thexel said flatly. "Asteroids don't just change direction. Check your equipment again." But as the hours passed, the readings became undeniable. The asteroid belt wasn't behaving like a collection of random space debris anymore. It was moving like a living thing, repositioning itself around the Cutherian fleet with mechanical precision. "Sir," his tactical officer said, voice barely above a whisper, "we now count over 300 asteroids that have altered their natural orbits. They're not moving randomly. They're positioning themselves around us." Thexel stared at the tactical display, his multiple eyes trying to process what he was seeing. The asteroids were forming a sphere around his fleet, slowly but steadily closing in. Some were as small as houses, others were the size of mountains. All of them were moving under their own power. "How is this possible?" he asked, but no one on his bridge had an answer. The truth was something the Cutherian Empire couldn't have imagined. For 3 decades, humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario. While Earth scientists publicly worked on colonies and mining operations, secret teams had been turning the asteroid belt into the largest weapons system ever built. Each asteroid had been carefully hollowed out and equipped with fusion engines. Mining equipment that looked harmless was actually sophisticated targeting and acceleration systems. What appeared to be simple ore processing facilities were actually command centers coordinating hundreds of mobile weapons platforms. And now, as the final hours of the ultimatum ticked away, humanity's true defensive grid was revealing itself. The aliens had been so focused on Earth's obvious defenses that they'd completely missed the real threat surrounding them in all directions. The asteroids continued their slow, inevitable approach, and for the first time since arriving at Earth, Fleet Commander Thexel began to wonder if he'd made a terrible mistake. 6 hours remained on humanity's ultimatum, and the universe was about to learn what 100 years of human paranoia could accomplish. Lieutenant Commander Park Mi-young sat in the deepest level of Sol Station, surrounded by screens that showed every corner of the solar system. Her job was coordination, and right now she was conducting the largest symphony of destruction ever assembled. Data streams flowed across her displays faster than the human eye could follow, but the computers kept perfect track of every single element. "Admiral, all stations are reporting ready status," she announced to Admiral Hyunwoo, who stood behind her chair watching the tactical overview. What they were looking at would have given nightmares to military strategists throughout the galaxy. Every single piece of human-made debris in space had suddenly revealed its true purpose. That broken satellite that had been floating near Mars for 15 years, it was actually a sensor relay. The abandoned space probe that had been drifting toward Jupiter since 2087, it was a targeting beacon. Even the garbage that space stations had been dumping for decades turned out to be disguised weapon components. "How many active nodes do we have in the network?" Hyunwoo asked. Park checked her readouts. 47,312 individual platforms, sir. Everything from asteroid-based mass drivers down to softball-sized proximity mines. The targeting grid covers every cubic meter of space within 8 astronomical units of Earth. The numbers were staggering, but the real genius was in how it all worked together. Every piece of the network could communicate with every other piece instantly through quantum entanglement communicators. When one sensor detected a target, thousands of weapons could coordinate their fire within milliseconds. On the Cytherian flagship, Fleet Commander Thexal was finally beginning to understand the trap he'd flown into. His science officer had spent the last 4 hours trying to map all the energy signatures surrounding their fleet, and the results were terrifying. "Commander," the science officer said, his voice shaking, "we're completely surrounded. I count active weapon signatures in every direction. Above us, below us, behind us, in front of us. There's no gap in their coverage." Thexal looked at the holographic display his officer had constructed. His fleet of 1,000 ships sat in the center of a perfect sphere of weapons. Red dots marked confirmed threats, yellow dots marked possible threats, and white dots marked unknown energy signatures. The display was almost solid color. "This is impossible," he whispered. "How did a primitive species build something like this?" His tactical officer, who had been running combat simulations for the past hour, looked up with pale terror in his eyes. "Sir, I've been trying to find escape routes. Our ships are fast and maneuverable, but—" He gestured helplessly at his screen. "They've blocked every possible path. If we try to run in any direction, we'll fly directly into overlapping fields of fire." The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since their first contact with aliens nearly a century ago. That first encounter had been peaceful, but it had taught Earth's leaders a valuable lesson. They were not alone in the universe, and they were not the strongest species out there, so they'd started building. Not just ships or weapons, but an entire defensive philosophy. Every space mission for the past 100 years had carried hidden secondary objectives. Every mining operation had secretly installed weapon platforms. Every scientific probe had been equipped with sensors that could double as targeting systems. The abandoned lunar mining facility from 2089? It actually contained a mass driver that could launch projectiles at nearly light speed. The failed Mars terraforming project from 2095. It was cover for installing atmospheric processors that could create massive dust storms to hide military movements. Even Earth's civilian space program had been part of the plan. Those thousands of communication satellites around Earth weren't just for internet and phone service. They were also nodes in a targeting network that could coordinate attacks across the entire solar system. Back on Sol Station, Park was watching the final pieces fall into place. "Admiral, the Jupiter stations are reporting full operational. Status, the Saturn ring mining platforms are online. Even the Pluto observation post is ready." Hyunwoo nodded grimly. Humanity had turned their entire solar system into a weapon, and now it was time to see if 100 years of preparation had been enough. The aliens had assumed they were dealing with a primitive species that had barely learned to fly between planets. They were about to discover that those same primitive humans had been using every day of the past century to prepare for exactly this situation. "All stations, this is Admiral Park," Hyunwoo announced over the General Communications channel. "Final systems check complete. We are go for Operation Solar Shield. May humanity's patience be remembered as our greatest strength, and our preparations as our wisest decision." Throughout the solar system, thousands of hidden installations hummed to life, ready to demonstrate the mathematics of war when calculated across an entire century of human determination. The countdown clock on Sol Station hit 0, and Fleet Commander Thexal made the decision that would haunt what remained of the Cytherian Empire forever. "All ships advance on the primary target," he commanded, his 6 eyes fixed on the blue marble hanging in space ahead of them. "Prepare planet-cracking charges. If these humans want to play games, we'll show them what real power looks like." 1,000 alien warships began moving toward Earth in perfect formation, their weapons charged with energy that could turn mountains into glass. Planet-cracking charges, devices designed to split worlds in half, hummed to life in their launching bays. The Cytherian attack began exactly as planned. The first wave targeted Earth's orbital platforms, those obvious defensive installations that any primitive species would build around their homeworld. Plasma beams lanced through space, striking the platforms and turning them into brief, brilliant explosions. Direct hits on 17 orbital defense stations, reported Thexal's weapons officer with satisfaction. Human defenses are collapsing as expected. That was when everything went wrong. On Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon, Major Kim Dong-hyun sat in a control room that didn't officially exist. For 40 years, this facility had been disguised as a simple research station studying Jupiter's radiation belts. In reality, it was the control center for humanity's most terrifying weapon. Major, we have confirmation that the aliens have opened fire on civilian targets, his communications officer reported. Earth Command is requesting immediate response. Kim looked at the displays showing Jupiter's immense bulk hanging outside their hidden base. The gas giant was more than just a planet to humanity now. It was the largest weapon in their arsenal. Jupiter array, full power, he ordered calmly. Target the lead battle group. Around Jupiter's orbit, installations hidden on 4 different moons began working in perfect coordination. Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto each housed gravitational manipulation devices that could focus Jupiter's massive gravitational field like a lens focusing sunlight. The effect was invisible but devastating. Waves of twisted gravity swept through space at the speed of light, hitting the leading edge of the Cytherian fleet with the force of a collapsing star. The elegant alien warships, designed to withstand plasma weapons and nuclear explosions, had no defense against gravity itself. Ships simply crumpled, their hulls folded inward like tin cans being squeezed by invisible hands. Internal bulkheads collapsed, crushing crew members who had milliseconds to realize what was happening. Entire vessels were compressed into balls of twisted metal and organic matter. "What's happening?" Thexal screamed as 50 of his ships vanished from his tactical display in the span of 10 seconds. His science officer stared at readings that made no sense. "Commander, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies. It's like space itself is attacking us." But Jupiter's moons were just the beginning. Throughout the asteroid belt, Captain Song Tae-hyun and hundreds of other hidden commanders received the same order at the same moment. All stations, weapons free. Show them what humans can do when we stop being polite. The asteroid belt erupted into coordinated violence. Mass drivers that had been disguised as mining equipment for decades opened fire simultaneously. Tungsten slugs accelerated to significant fractions of light speed crossed the distance to the alien fleet in seconds. But the asteroids themselves were the real weapons. Fusion engines hidden inside hollowed-out space rocks ignited at full power, turning mountains of stone and metal into kinetic projectiles. Series over 900 kilometers across began accelerating directly toward the alien formation, like a guided missile the size of a small country. Vesta followed, then Pallas, then hundreds of smaller asteroids. Each one moved with mechanical precision, their trajectories calculated to create an inescapable net of destruction around the alien fleet. "Impossible!" Thexal shouted, as his tactical display showed the true scope of humanity's response. How are they moving entire asteroids? The answer was simple but terrifying. Humanity had spent a century turning their solar system into a weapon, and they just pulled the trigger. Alien ships tried to evade, but there was nowhere to run. Gravity waves from Jupiter crushed vessels, trying to escape in one direction. Relativistic projectiles from the asteroid belt destroyed ships fleeing in another. And the asteroids themselves, each one a mountain-sized guided missile, closed in from every angle. In less than 5 minutes, Thexal's mighty fleet of 1,000 ships was reduced to scattered debris and desperate survivors. The humans hadn't just fought back. They demonstrated that when you threaten Earth, you're not fighting a planet. You're fighting an entire solar system that's been weaponized by a species that's very, very good at long-term planning. What started as a confident invasion had become the worst military disaster in Cytherian history. Fleet Commander Thexal gripped the arms of his command chair as his bridge shook from another near miss. Through the viewports, he could see the impossible sight of entire asteroids moving like guided missiles, their fusion engines burning bright against the black of space. "Status report!" he shouted over the alarms screaming throughout his flagship. His tactical officer's voice cracked with panic. "Sir, we've lost 730 ships in the past 12 minutes. The humans have us surrounded in all 3 dimensions. Every time we try to break through their lines, more weapons appear from directions we didn't even know were threats." It was true. The Cytherian fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was being torn apart by an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Ships that tried to retreat toward the outer system ran straight into asteroid-mounted mass drivers that appeared from nowhere. Vessels attempting to escape toward the inner planets were crushed by gravity waves from Jupiter's moons. Even ships, trying to flee upward or downward from the solar plane, found themselves targeted by weapons hidden in seemingly empty space. "How are they doing this?" Thexal demanded. "Where are all these weapons coming from?" His science officer looked up from his desperately beeping console. "Commander, I think they've turned their entire solar system into a weapon. Every piece of debris, every abandoned satellite, every mining installation we detected, they're all part of the same network." As if to prove his point, a Cytherian destroyer exploded just outside their viewports. It had been caught between 2 asteroids, each one the size of a city, that had somehow coordinated their approach to crush the ship like a nut in a cracker. The precision was terrifying. The asteroids had timed their collision to the microsecond, ensuring maximum damage to the alien vessel while avoiding each other. Captain Song Tai-hyun watched the destruction from his command center inside asteroid 2087, Karin. His installation had just eliminated 3 enemy ships using nothing more sophisticated than chunks of iron accelerated to incredible speeds. But all around him, dozens of other hidden installations were doing the same thing. "Captain," his weapons officer reported, "we're receiving targeting data for another group of enemy vessels. Should we engage?" "Negative," Song replied, checking his tactical display. "Let asteroids 4472 and 3391 handle that group. We need to save our ammunition for the ships trying to escape toward Saturn." This was the beauty of humanity's defensive grid. Every installation could see what every other installation was doing. There was no duplication of effort, no wasted shots. The entire solar system fought like a single organism, each part working in perfect harmony with all the others. On the Cytherian flagship, Thexal watched in horror as another wave of his ships simply vanished. They hadn't been destroyed by conventional weapons. They'd been compressed into tiny balls of matter by artificial gravity fields that appeared and disappeared like invisible fists. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different captains. They want permission to abandon their ships." Thexal looked at his tactical display one more time. Of his original 1,000 ships, fewer than 100 were still functional. The humans weren't just winning, they were demonstrating complete superiority in every aspect of warfare. "All ships," he broadcast on the fleet-wide channel, his voice barely above a whisper. "Emergency jump procedures. Retreat to rally point 7. Maximum speed." But even retreat wasn't simple. As Cytherian ships tried to activate their faster-than-light drives, they discovered that the humans had thought of that too. Gravitational interference from Jupiter's weaponized moons made it nearly impossible to form stable jump portals. Ships that tried to escape were either torn apart by unstable space-time distortions or found their jump drives simply wouldn't function. Admiral Park Hyun-woo watched the alien retreat from Seoul Station, his expression calm despite the magnitude of what had just happened. "Lieutenant Commander Park, how many enemy vessels are attempting to flee?" 47 ships still functional and trying to escape, sir," she reported. "Should we pursue and destroy?" Hyun-woo considered for a moment. This was the crucial decision, the one that would determine how the galaxy remembered this day. Negative. Allow them to leave, but make sure exactly enough of them survive to tell the story. Throughout the solar system, human weapon operators received the stand-down order. Asteroids that could have easily intercepted the fleeing ships instead adjusted their courses to let them pass. Mass drivers that had clear shots held their fire. The gravity weapons around Jupiter powered down just enough to allow the aliens to jump to faster-than-light speed. Of the 1,000 proud warships that had arrived to conquer Earth, exactly 43 limped away into deep space. They carried with them the survivors of the greatest military disaster in galactic history, and a story that would change how every species in the galaxy thought about humanity. The humans had given them exactly one chance to leave peacefully. When that chance was refused, Earth had demonstrated why it should have been taken. Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood in the command center of Seoul Station, watching the scattered remains of the alien fleet limping away from Earth. His tactical displays showed dozens of human weapons still tracking the fleeing ships. One word from him could end this completely. Every alien vessel could be destroyed before they reached the edge of the solar system. But Hyun-woo had spent 30 years in the Space Navy, and he understood something that many military commanders forgot. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is restraint. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Park Mi-young said from her coordination station, "all weapon platforms are requesting permission to engage the fleeing vessels. We have clear shots on every remaining ship." Around the command center, junior officers waited for the order to finish what they'd started. The aliens had come to destroy Earth after all. They'd threatened to process billions of human beings like raw materials. Many of the staff expected their admiral to complete the elimination of the threat. Instead, Hyun-woo surprised everyone. "Negative. Stand down all weapons, let them go." The command center fell silent. Lieutenant Kim So-ra looked up from her communications console. "Sir, are you sure? They might regroup and return with reinforcements." Hyun-woo smiled grimly. "Lieutenant, do you really think any species in the galaxy is going to risk attacking Earth after seeing what just happened here? We've just demonstrated that we can turn our entire solar system into a weapon. But more importantly, we need witnesses." He pointed to the tactical display showing the fleeing alien ships. "Those survivors are going to carry a very specific message across the galaxy. Not just that humanity is powerful, but that we gave them a chance to avoid this fight entirely." Far beyond Pluto's orbit, Captain Kang Soo-jin commanded a weapons platform that officially didn't exist. Her installation was humanity's final line of defense, hidden in the cold darkness at the very edge of the solar system. Any ship trying to escape would have to pass directly through her firing range. "Captain," her weapons officer reported, "we have the alien flagship in our sights. Clean shot, no interference. Should we take it?" Kang had been waiting for this moment. Her railgun could punch through the alien ship's damaged hull like paper. But the order coming through her communications system was different from what she'd expected. "Understood, Earth Command," she replied. "The flagship will be allowed to escape, tracking all other vessels for potential threats." Her crew looked confused, but they followed orders. 43 alien ships passed through the killing zone around their hidden platform, and 43 ships were allowed to continue their retreat into deep space. Well, almost all of them. "Captain," her tactical officer said quietly, "one of the smaller vessels is showing signs of weapons charging. It looks like they might be planning a revenge attack." Kang checked her displays. Her Cytherian destroyer was indeed powering up its plasma cannons, probably planning one final strike at Earth before jumping to faster-than-light speed. "Take it out," she ordered without hesitation. The railgun fired once, and the destroyer became a brief flash of light in the darkness. The other alien ships got the message and continued their retreat without any further hostility. On the damaged Cytherian flagship, Commander Thexal nursed his wounds and tried to process what had happened. His mighty fleet had been destroyed by a species he'd considered primitive. Worse, they'd allowed him to live, which somehow felt more humiliating than if they'd simply killed him. His communications officer looked up from his damaged console. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human homeworld." "Put it through," Thexal said wearily. Admiral Hyun-woo's face appeared on the cracked viewscreen, looking calm and professional. There was no gloating in his expression, no anger or hatred. He spoke like a teacher delivering an important lesson. "Fleet Commander Thexal, you are being allowed to leave our solar system unharmed. This is not because we lack the ability to destroy your remaining ships. As you've seen, we possess more than adequate firepower. This is because we believe in giving species a chance to learn from their mistakes." Thexal said nothing, but his 6 eyes remained fixed on the human admiral. "You were given one chance to leave peacefully," Hyun-woo continued. "You chose to ignore that offer and attack our world instead. Remember that choice when you tell others. What happened here? Remember that humanity offered mercy first and delivered justice only when mercy was refused. The transmission ended, leaving Thexal alone with his thoughts and his failures. As his ship limped toward the jump point that would take him away from Earth forever, he realized that the humans had given him something more valuable than his life. They'd given him a story that would change the galaxy. 3 months after the battle that changed everything, the galaxy was a very different place. The Cytherian Empire, which had dominated 17 star systems for over 2 centuries, simply ceased to exist, not because of invasion or internal collapse, but because every species under their control had quietly packed up and left. On the Fiesel, trade station orbiting Kepler 442b, alien merchants whispered the story to each other in hushed tones. The humans had given the mighty Cytherians one warning, one chance to leave peacefully. When that chance was ignored, an entire solar system had revealed itself to be a weapon. I heard they turned asteroids into guided missiles, a Zeltonian trader said, his blue skin pale with fear. My cousin was monitoring their communications, replied a Vegan diplomat. The humans weren't even using their full capabilities. They could have wiped out the entire fleet in minutes, but they chose to let survivors escape. The story spread through hyperspace communication networks faster than any ship could travel. Within weeks, every spacefaring civilization had heard some version of what happened at Earth. The details varied, but the core message remained the same. Humanity had offered mercy first, and when that mercy was refused, they demonstrated why it should have been accepted. General Yoon Hye-jin walked through the command center she'd built deep inside Ceres, reviewing reports that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Her screens showed the asteroid belt's defensive grid operating normally, but also displayed something new: diplomatic requests. General, her communications officer, Major Kim Seung-ho, looked up from his console with barely contained excitement. We've got another one. The Tau Ceti Confederation wants to establish formal diplomatic relations. They're offering exclusive mining rights to 3 uninhabited systems in exchange for a non-aggression pact. Hye-jin nodded calmly, but inside, she felt amazed. 3 months ago, most alien species had never heard of humanity. Now they were lining up to negotiate treaties. What's the count now, Major? 47 different species or governments have requested meetings, ma'am. The Andromedan Collective even offered to share their faster-than-light technology if we'll guarantee safe passage through our solar system for their trade ships. Was remarkable how quickly things had changed. Before the Cytherian incident, Earth had been just another primitive world on the galaxy's edge, barely worth noticing. Now humanity's solar system had become one of the most respected territorial boundaries in known space. The defensive grid that had destroyed the Cytherian fleet was still active, still watching the approaches to Earth with thousands of hidden sensors. But its reputation had become almost as powerful as the weapons themselves. Captain Song Tae-hyun, still commanding his installation inside asteroid 2087 Karen, had watched 17 different alien fleets approach the solar system's edge over the past 3 months. Some were explorers, some were traders, and a few might have been potential invaders. But all of them had the same reaction when their sensors detected the energy signatures of humanity's defensive network. They turned around and left. Captain, his sensor operator reported, we've got another group approaching from the Vega direction. 3 ships, medium-size, broadcasting peaceful intentions. Song checked his tactical display. The ships were maintaining a respectful distance, well outside the solar system's outer boundary. Their energy signatures matched those of the Syrian Merchant Guild, a trading organization known for being extremely cautious about entering new territories. Are they requesting permission to enter the system? Negative, sir. They're asking if they can establish a trade station just outside our defensive perimeter. They want to exchange goods with human merchants, but they don't want to risk accidentally triggering our defenses. Song smiled. The galaxy had learned to respect human space, but they still wanted to do business with Earth. It was exactly the outcome Admiral Park had hoped for when he'd made the decision to let the Cytherian survivors escape. Back on Earth, In the halls of the United Nations building in New York, Secretary General Chen Wei-ming reviewed the daily diplomatic briefings with growing satisfaction. The planet that had once struggled to achieve unity among its own species was now receiving requests for alliances from civilizations across the galaxy. Madam Secretary General, her aide announced, the Council of Rigel wants to invite Earth to join their mutual defense pact. They're offering full membership with voting rights. Chen set down her coffee and considered the implications. A year ago, humanity had been alone in the universe, wondering if they'd ever make contact with other intelligent species. Now they were being courted by galactic powers as a potential ally. The transformation was complete. Humanity had never sought to conquer anyone, never tried to build an empire or dominate other worlds. They had simply made it clear that Earth would not be conquered either. In doing so, they had earned something far more valuable than territory or tribute. They had earned respect. The message had spread to every corner of known space, carried by the survivors of a fleet that had learned too late what humanity was capable of. Earth gives you one chance to walk away peacefully. Make sure it's the only chance you need.